That game's going to be so exciting to see these two teams take on each other, the Bills and the Chiefs, the game everybody's been waiting for. And to join us now here on Fantasy Football Today to break it down is Tom Spencer, CBS Sports editorial consultant, in the booth with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. They'll be on the call on CBS for this huge matchup in Kansas City between the Bills and the Chiefs. And Tom, let's start with the non-obvious, because everybody knows there's going to be Mahomes and Allen and Kelsey and Diggs and all the stars. But some of the secondary players are going to be big in this matchup, as we saw in the playoff game. Gabe Davis in particular, 4 touchdowns in that matchup, coming off a huge game last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is this going to be another big week for Gabe Davis? And give me the breakdown of Isaiah McKenzie and Khalil Shakir as well, because we saw Shakir step up last week with McKenzie dealing with the concussion.
Yeah, good morning, Jamie. That was a pretty good history lesson right there. I'm thinking about great rivalries, Steelers, Raiders in the 70s, Niners, Cowboys in the 80s and 90s, and then the Colts and the Patriots most recently. And this is definitely developing into that type of rivalry with these two great quarterbacks, 5th time they've met in the last 2 years. And what's fun is you've got the 2 highest scoring offenses in the league and the 2 best quarterbacks when it comes to throwing touchdown passes. So like you say, we're expecting a lot of offensive fireworks from Buffalo's perspective. What's interesting to me in looking back at these last 4 games is that Stephon Diggs has really not been a factor statistically. Now, he's a factor because he's on the field and he requires so much attention, but he only has 17 catches and 1 touchdown in those 4 games. Contrast that with Kelsey on the other side, who has 32 catches and 6 touchdowns. So Kansas City's found a way to get the ball in their best players' hands. Conversely, that opens up opportunities for others. And you mentioned Gabe Davis. Obviously, last year, the 4 touchdowns, an historic record for a postseason game. He's leading the league in yards per catch, over 28 yards per catch this season. Small sample size, I'll grant you, but he is a definite downfield threat, as we saw last week. In fact, 85% of his catches are for either first downs or touchdowns. So he's a great 1A option. Isaiah McKenzie coming back after the concussion, 15 catches this year, 3 touchdowns. He is the definitive slot receiver. He is the definitive number 3 in this offense, and expect him to be on the field a lot today. I don't know about Shakir. Now, he gained a lot of trust from Josh Allen last week with those 3 catches and a touchdown, but I would expect to see him more in 4 wide receiver sets today, and it's a question of how much Ken Dorsey and this offense, if schematically they want to do that against Kansas City, who is thin, by the way, in their secondary today with a couple key injuries.
Should be interesting to see how the Bills spread the targets around. So hopefully we're getting some big games from Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie as well. A lot of fantasy managers relying on those guys, certainly Davis, after his huge game last week against Pittsburgh. Let's talk about the run game for Buffalo, more specifically just the running back situation, because we know they don't want to run the ball. They just want to throw the ball all over the place. But Devin Singletary, the last couple of weeks, we've seen a huge increase in his playing time and even his production. Now, last week a little bit disappointing, but I think you see what could happen for Singletary as you look at what Josh Jacobs did against this Chiefs defense, and they allow a lot of receptions to running backs on the season. So can Singletary just be a significant piece of this offense, or is this going to be all about Josh Allen, the receiver?
Well, again, statistics would dictate that it's going to be a Josh Allen, even Patrick Mahomes' high rushing output. They have combined, Jamie, 428 rush yards in those 4 games I mentioned. So the quarterbacks are still the leading rushers traditionally in this matchup. Even last week, Josh Allen was tied for the most rushing yards for Buffalo. Now that game, a little bit of an anomaly because it was such a blowout early, and in fact, many of the starters for the Bills were resting in the 4th quarter. Singletary in this game in January did catch 4 balls out of the backfield, got a lot of touches. The guy I'm interested in seeing though today, now coming back for Buffalo is tight end Dawson Knox. Now he's been on the injury report with a hamstring and a foot. The question, if you're Buffalo, is do you rely on him to play an entire game, or do you maybe activate a 3rd tight end? If they did that, would they then sit down a running back? Say Zach Moss doesn't play today. If that was the case, James Cook had 4 rushes last week and his first career NFL touchdown. He's a guy they've been touting. They love his route running ability and his ability to catch the football. So looking maybe not necessarily at today isolated, but down the road, I think James Cook slowly starts to creep his way into the Buffalo offense. And like you say, They love the swing passes, the short passes, which acts like almost like a 49ers in the 80s with Roger Craig, pass game / run game. I think Cook eventually is going to start elevating to the clear number 2, and who knows, maybe down the road even higher.
Yeah, Sean McDermott said at the beginning of the season, expect a slow build for James Cook, and maybe we're starting to see it. So it should be fun to see how they use him in this big game. Let's go to the other side of the ball now. We know it's always fun to try to figure out who's going to be the best Chiefs wide receiver. So I'm just going to put it to you like this. Fill in the blank, Tom. The best Chiefs wide receiver for Week 6 will be?
Wow, I thought I was done with quizzes and tests after school, but you got me here, Jamie. I'm going to guess, educated, that Juju Smith-Schuster steps up today. And the reason is Buffalo plays a lot of zone defense. They like to play their safeties deep. Obviously, both these teams do not want to see the ball going over their head, much the same as we saw in January, much the same as Buffalo produced last week against Pittsburgh. So in that situation, other than that great game that Juju had at Denver with the 2 97-yard touchdowns that you recall 3 or 4 years ago, he's really been, an inside receiver predominantly. That's where he really works the field. And I would expect that would be an area where he could, maybe get some catches today. Now, Valdez-Scantling had a big game on Monday night with 6 catches for 90 yards, but the Raiders, again, schematically played different. They play more man, and that probably opened up some more opportunities for him. He's traditionally a downfield threat, maybe not as comfortable running over the middle or in short routes. So based on that premise, I'm going with Juju today.
Feels like that's the way things have gone for him. Hopefully he's healthy after battling through the quad and hamstring injuries prior to plays in the Raiders, but did get 8 targets in that game, only 3 catches, 30 yards, so just need to pick up his production a little bit and still looking for his first touchdown. All right, the other question with the Chiefs is always who's going to be the best running back. So again, let's phrase it the same way. Fill in the blank. The best Chiefs running back for Week 6 will be?
Well, again, that's a great question. And segueing back to my previous answer, Mahomes is throwing the ball a lot to running backs and tight ends. So that combination at those 2 positions leads the league in total yards and touchdowns. So again, it's not been a huge wide receiver output. Smith-Schuster and Valdez-Scantling have 41 catches combined, no touchdowns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, his best career game was against Buffalo in 2020, 161 yards. He's had 5 touchdowns this year. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. However, if you look back at January and even on Monday night against the Raiders, Jerick McKinnon had the most touches. McKinnon had 15 touches in January, 5 catches for 54 yards. He had a good game Monday night. So the question we had to Eric Bieniemy the other day is who's going to be your primary running back? And he just simply said the hot hand. That's how they operate around here. Mahomes can scramble. Pacheco's a great downhill runner. They like him a lot, but are they ready to give him 15, 20 touches today? Don't think so. Again, it's going to be spread the ball around, see who's hot, and see if they can move the football against a pretty stout Buffalo defense.
Yeah, McKinnon's been playing more snaps. We'll see if that leads to more production. Clyde's just been so fantastic for fantasy managers, but a lot of it has been touchdown heavy. So if he doesn't score against Buffalo, it could be a little frustrating, but going to be a lot of points. So I'm sure there's an opportunity here for Clyde to find the end zone. Tom, we can't wait to watch the game. Thank you for your breakdown of the Bills and the Chiefs. We appreciate your time here as always on Fantasy Football Today.
Enjoyed it. Thanks.
Make sure you check out Inside the NFL. New episodes drop every Tuesday exclusively on Paramount+. JB and the gang get you inside information, stories around the NFL, lots to talk about as we're heating up, getting close to the trade deadline, coaches being fired. Don't miss Inside the NFL every Tuesday exclusively on Paramount+.